want to welcome you all to this second event, making the connections between healthy soils and climate change, the opportunities for carbon sequestration in localizing our food economy. And I'm very pleased to say that this evening's event is put on by the Mendocino chapter of the League of Women Voters. And this is a free event. We wouldn't mind it if you put a little something in the donation jar there on the way out to support this so we can have more events like this. Oh my goodness, all of our presenters are here. So this is going to be kind of a free-form evening. We will have a presentation as long as our presenters wish to, in the neighborhood of, say, 40 minutes or so, a dialogue between the four of them. And then we will open it up to brief questions from the audience. And that will be questions that come from this microphone. I'll turn it around and you can do your inquiries of our panel at that time. But I sort of have an excuse because my voice is giving out. So there's going to be no moderator. We're going to see if we can kind of do this as a community with our thoughts and our feelings moving towards that shared vision we have of making this a place where people really understand the value of local food, the ways we can make local food prosper in our community. And I have a handout that I created, and there's extra copies at the back, and I distributed about 30 in the audience. But if you're curious about who is presenting and who is speaking, we have all the names here. I will run through them as the last thing that I do. But thank you all for coming. This is very exciting. And if any people arrive later on, tell them about this information sheet that might help them get up to speed. So our presenters are Sarah, oh, and there are plenty of chairs up front, so please consider coming down to the front if you would like to. We have, starting here on the right, well, your left side, I should know. We have Sarah Kellerman from the Noyo Food Forest. And then we have Magnolia Barrett from Three Sisters Produce. And then we have Jamie Jensen from the Botanical Gardens. And my voice is starting to squeak. And we have Kyle Burns from Nye Ranch. So without further ado, I'm going to put this back up here, turn the microphone off, and let's see how this goes. As you can see on this kind of kickoff sheet, I've suggested a couple of topics that might be helpful, but let's just see where it goes, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah. Okay. Should we all introduce ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that first. Hi, I'm Sarah Kellerman. I am the Director of Educational Programs at the Noyo Food Forest, which is a nonprofit in Fort Bragg. We're an educational and garden nonprofit, so we have a production garden that's less than half an acre, and there we grow food for the schools, for all the school cafeterias, for the farmers market, and we also donate produce to the food bank and the senior center. And we have year-round education programs for high school students. So we have internships after school in the fall and the spring, and the students come a few days after school and work in the garden. And it's a mixture of hands-on education. They're learning about how to grow food, and we also talk about bigger food systems issues. And then we also do an intensive summer internship where the students can kind of create their own schedule. And they get to see the garden in full swing, and it's really great. They get to actually experience, they plant
Sarah,
something.
I think if the microphone is a little closer to you,
Okay.
it'd be better for the people in the back.
Okay, they get to plant, transplant, harvest, bring to the market, so they see the entire cycle. We also run free workshops for gardeners and farmers and interested people in the community. And those are on a wide range of topics. And yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna say for now, but I'll tell you more later.
Hello. Cool, thanks, Sarah. Hi, my name's Maggie, and I wear lots of different hats in the community, but representing Three Sisters Produce Company, which is a business that I have with my mom and my grandma, purchasing produce from local farmers and then packing boxes, writing a newsletter with information about what's in the boxes and recipes and like ideas of what to do with summer squash when you've gotten it for the 9th week in a row, that kind of thing. This is going to be our 3rd season. Yeah, so I can talk more about that later. I also am the veggie gardener down at Glen Devon in Little River, doing some bringing the farm into the luxury farmstead for all the folks who come up from the Bay Area and want a little taste of the Mendocino country life. And then I'm also studying right now integrative health, and so I'm really interested in this conversation maybe talking a bit about how we all see local food as part of these big health questions that we're facing at a societal level, and how that's all related to what's going on the planet. Yeah, and hopefully having some Q&A too. Oh, that's cool.
Hi, I'm Jamie Jensen, and I am the lead gardener at the Botanical Gardens. And I also have managed the vegetable garden there for the last 5 years or so. The vegetable garden over there produces food for the Fort Bragg Food Bank. We produce about 7,000 pounds a year in a very small amount of space. It's a very productive little garden. We have many volunteers that work in that garden, and it really sort of throughout time has been a place where volunteers have gathered and shared information from their own gardens, and shared seeds from their own gardens, and shared plants from their own gardens, and food from their own gardens, and sort of is a really nice space where people from the community who have grown attached to and grown a relationship with this garden are coming and going and sharing about vegetables and food. In addition to that, we have about, oh gosh, the number's actually blanking on me right now, but many thousands of people that come through the Botanical Gardens every year and see it as a demonstration garden, organic vegetable production demonstration garden. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you guys, and talking about food is something that gives me great joy in food production, and so I'm glad we're here to do that.
Hello, thank you George for putting this on, and League of Women Voters for hosting this as well, and everyone for coming out, and these women for being part of this community with us. My name is Kyle Burns. I run the Nye Ranch farm with my wife Mel, who's here tonight, and we have our new interns in town, Hannah. Yeah, we are a small farm just right up the road. We're a mixed vegetable operation with, my wife does the flower side of the farm, and we all help each other out, but we try to focus on farm efficiency and it's such an exciting time to be a small farmer with all the new tools to help us become successful, because farming is not an easy occupation to make a living at. But we feel very lucky to have such a supportive community, and we incorporate a lot of practices to create a healthy soil, and through minimum soil disturbance and cover cropping, and keeping the soil covered at all times, especially on a windy day like this. My eyes feel very strained after being outside all day, so I'm sorry about that. I look a little glossy-eyed. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, and what's next?
I'm gonna jump in.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to say, there's lots of I forgot to say two things. There's lots of information on the back tables about Nye Ranch, about the Botanical Gardens, about Three Sisters Produce. Do you have anything about the forest? Maybe not. But we have on the 20th, Earth Day at the Noyo Food Forest. Don't miss that. It's a fabulous event. And I just wanted to ask one person from the audience to make an announcement about a very exciting initiative that Matt and I have talked about. Matt, if you would just come up and just talk about the Gardens Loving City, or whatever we're calling it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, George.
You can take the microphone out.
This comes out. Has anyone here heard of Tree City before? Yeah, raise your hand. A few people. Has anyone heard of Bee City?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Was anyone a part of making Fort Bragg Bee City in the audience today? Cool. Thank you. We're trying to start another thing called Garden Friendly Community, and we're trying to do the same thing that Tree City did with planting trees, the same thing that Bee City did with encouraging pollinator habitat, stopping the spraying of pesticides, to promote gardening as a solution for climate change, and just to promote a healthy, resilient community through gardening. So if anyone's interested, we have a little sign-up sheet back there. Next week on the 17th of April at 6:30 in this room, we're going to have a meeting to figure out what that means. We have a template resolution and a couple ideas, and we want community input, and we want more people to be a part of this. So if you're interested, come talk to me or sign up on the sheet back there. And again, it's April 17th at 6:30 p.m. in this room.
Matt, please tell them about everything he brought. I encouraged all the presenters to bring stuff. He brought a wheelbarrow full of stuff. He's got seeds, he's got announcements and all this, so tell people what you brought.
Yeah, we always bring plenty of propaganda. So we have a seed bank at the Stanford Inn in Mendocino. Maggie just brought in some awesome sunset runner beans that she grew out. We have over 500 varieties of locally grown seeds that are free to anyone who wants to access them. There's a binder back there you can fill out a little sheet, and then we'll mail them to you for free of charge. Then we do workshops and classes, and we have some newsletters back there, so that's the gist.
Email just since you're up here.
Yeah, my phone number is 847-404-2586. 847-404-2586, and my email is Matt, with 2 T's, at Victory Gardens for Peace.
And his email, as well as all the other emails of all the people, are on that handout sheet. We have extra copies of it in the back if you haven't picked one up. Thank you.
I think we should use what Matt just talked about as kind of a jumping off point. Yeah, so I think that in many, many ways, we are so lucky to be where we are. Not only do we have a climate that allows us to grow food all year round, we also have an incredibly supportive community. I have never lived in a place that's this invested in local sustainable agriculture. And so maybe we can talk about some of the ways that we see that manifested in our different organizations.
So now that I have asked that question, I don't want to answer it first.
I can start.
I mean, like,
Yeah, so it's funny. I grew up around here, and as many teenagers do, I rebelled against my parents, one of whom is a gardener in the local schools. And I really wanted to have a job where I could have, like, wear clean clothes to work every day. Felt really important. And so a couple years into college, I had some, like, personal health stuff come up that was pretty intense and made me kind of reevaluate my life in a lot of ways. And I realized that I was really missing being in a garden. So I kind of rediscovered farming and agriculture through that approach, and then through, like, social justice and activism, and stayed in the farming world for a little while in other places in California. And when I came back here in 2015, it was for the job at Noyo Food Forest, where Sarah now works. And it was kind of this, like, beginning wave of, like, it felt like there was already this revival in food, growing food, farmers around here, more people showing up, but it was still the beginning of that. And my mom and I really wanted to do something related to farming, but we didn't really have a lot of land, so full-on production farming wasn't really an option. So I came up with this business plan designed for CSA, community-supported agriculture, this idea of committing to supporting local food early in the season, paying up front, and then receiving produce throughout the rest of the growing season. And our model was a little bit different because we were going to be sourcing from local farms. So we thought it was this great idea, like there wasn't a CSA on the coast, like here we go. And just over the last couple of months, I've been noticing that there are so many CSAs popping up in the community. And I find that, like, so incredibly hopeful and amazing that there are so many farms that are recognizing a need and filling this like demand of local food. And I think it's a testament to the community that this many farms are putting this service out there. And that didn't exist just in the couple years that I've been back in this community. And there's, Nye Ranch and Fortunate Farm have weekend farm stands. There's more ways for people to get local produce than there were. And my hope is that that's only going to continue to grow, and that we'll see that same degree of interest continue over the next few years. That's kind of a long answer.
So I came here from Sacramento, and in Sacramento I was working in social sciences with at-risk youth in a mentoring program. And Sacramento's a big city, but comparatively speaking, it has a lot of vegetables. It has a lot of produce. It's right in the middle of the agricultural center. Like one of the biggest agriculture produce producers in the country. There are markets, mini markets, but I was working with kids in Sacramento, and they didn't really know where their food was coming from. I had a few experiences with students where it was like this aha moment for them when they were presented with fresh vegetables and ripe vegetables, and could eat them, cook them, and eat them, and experience that. So that's how I ended up getting into vegetable production, and it was really about, to me, it was really about the relationship of the human to the food. And at the Botanical Gardens, I see that, to speak to the question, in this community, I see that so much more than I have ever seen it before as well. And there's so many opportunities here. You know, every student in this community has gardening classes all of their entire life. I mean, or an opportunity for it all the way through 12th grade. And that is amazing and really beautiful because the experience of a human being to actually go and raise their own food and raise it from a seed all the way to the plate is just, it's profound and beautiful. And so, you know, that's why I do it. And also I think that a lot of people else here, a lot of other people here in this community do it, and we can really relate on that topic, and that's lovely.
Okay, great answers and stories. I've always had a passion for growing veggies. I was homeschooled till high school, so I always helped my mom in the garden. My other two brothers were just like, we'll eat it, but we're not going to help. And I've always enjoyed getting my hands dirty. And as I got older, I realized I kind of wanted to get into farming, but I just didn't know how necessarily. And I was lucky enough to meet my wife, Mel, her girlfriend at the time, and she was working on an organic flower farm in the valley in Chico. And we started to dream of creating our own farm, and we were fortunate enough to have, my parents have the Nye Ranch property, and so we leased land from there to start a farm. And we moved out here and moved here in the fall and planted a cover crop, and we're like, here we go, we're farming. And we got a lot of rain, and the cover crop grew about 4 inches, and we're like, what are we doing? Oops. So, but then we realized our field we did soil tests on it and everything, and the soil looked all right, but it just didn't drain well. So we created all those raised beds with a shovel, which was a lot of work. They're 100-foot rows, and we, our first year we did 47 raised beds, 100 feet long. And that's all it needed was a little lift, and the soil was very compacted from years of overgrazing and just abuse from horses and cattle, and that's why we kind of stuck with the Nye Ranch name. Is historically it was a dairy farm, and although we like the history of it, it kind of has a dirty reputation of just being, you know, neglected and just overgrazed. But as soon as we started making those raised beds, we had locals stopping by and asking us what we're doing, what we're growing. They're like, you're growing peas and potatoes? That's going to be so great. And we're like, oh, we're going to try more than that. It's a big experiment, and you know, all the hard work's paid off, and the community's really shown up and supported us, and we just feel so lucky. But where am I going with this? I don't know. What's the question?
The support of the local support, yeah.
So, we do a plant sale, an annual plant sale, kind of as a fundraiser for our own farm, and a lot of people ask us why we would do a plant sale and make people grow their own food, and we essentially give our profits to home gardeners, and we're like, well, we're just encouraging people to eat local and eat fresh and eat healthy produce, and once they try that, and so many of you know that you'll never go back to store-bought, because it's just, you know, it's garbage, it's old, it's grown, even the organic stuff's grown with, you know, just without any minerals in it, and we're just trying to create and foster this food system that encourages nutrition and sustainability, and we just feel very lucky to be a part of it.
Will not answer my own question. and I'm gonna take it from kind of a different angle, which is that I think the state of California is a leader in so many ways, politically. As we face climate change, the state is doing a lot of things that the federal government is unwilling to do. And we do have, in this climate here, the ability to grow food all year round, and it reminds me of this idea. There's a very cool book. It's called Civic Agriculture, Farms, Food, and Community. And it suggests that in communities like Mendocino, where it's rural, but there are interested and involved people, that everyone should be involved in the process of growing food in some aspect or another, whether that's financially supporting the growth of food in that community, whether you're actually growing the food, whether that's just taking an interest in going to the botanical gardens and walking around and learning about, you know, what grows where you live. And I see that happening here. You know, we have 2 farmers markets in the summer and 1 year-round market, which for a community of our size is pretty remarkable, and people come. They're very well attended and growing. We have health food stores that people support and shop at often. And we have, as Maggie said, several CSAs, more every year. People really are focused and are paying attention to the ways that they can support sustainable agriculture in our community. So, good job, everyone, and keep doing it.
Yeah? Okay. Awesome. Yeah, well, okay, so real quick, one thing I wanted to throw out that feels important to emphasize is I'm pretty sure that the Wednesday farmers market in Fort Bragg is the biggest one in the county. Other people in the audience might have some statistics on how much it's bringing in each. Do you know any off the top of your head?
How much it makes?
Yeah, some of the record breakers this last
The
summer.
Fort Bragg market brings in over, I think it's around $500,000 a year, which the other markets, even the Ukiah market's on a Saturday, and it has higher sales than that. It's by a substantial amount, so we're very lucky.
Yeah, one of the inland farmers told me that when they come to the coast, they feel like they're coming to like play with the big dogs. Just wanted to throw that out there. And then I wanted to speak a little bit more, Sarah, to what you said about this book, suggesting that everyone be involved in the food system, everyone be involved in food production. I wanted to like underline that for a second. And I wanted to say that you don't have to be a farmer to be involved. When I was in college, I was in the East Bay, and like growing food was getting really sexy. You know, it was like cool to be a farmer. And so I tried really hard to be a farmer for many years. I worked for Kyle and Mel. I put myself all out for this effort, and I exhausted myself season after season. I was drained by the fall, and I would have to spend the winter just in recovery mode. I was like, what am I doing? I'm working way too many hours in a day. I'm relying on like Los Gallitos for burritos because I don't have enough time to cook for myself. I'm like not eating the food I'm growing. Like, what is going on? And so I've really had to slow down, and I am still trying to figure out what my exact role is. But I wanted to encourage, if we can have highlight some takeaways for people in this conversation, so that can feel like there's some momentum forward. Just encourage you to really think about what your gifts are and how that can support like these multiple stages that it feels like our humanity is being asked to move through. So there's like this degree of getting food to the food bank, getting food to the churches who are feeding people every week, getting like more access to the EBT program. Our local farmers market has a thing where if you come to spend food stamps dollars there, for a portion of the season, they'll match you dollar for dollar. So then those folks are able to, instead of just spending $30, they have $60 to spend and put both into the local food system and then take that food home. So there's some immediate steps to take. But then I also think there's this bigger question of redesigning the way that we approach how we grow food. And that might not happen completely in your lifetime or my lifetime. But my mom emphasizes this a lot, that we have a responsibility to maintain contact with the knowledge of growing food, what it means to be in connection to seasons, what it means to save seed. And we're in this special opportunity right now where the stakes aren't actually very high to have a garden. You can try and you can mess every single crop up and it's okay, you can still eat. But it might not be like that it might not be like that in our entire lifetime. And it might not be like that for, the kids who are in the school garden programs right now. So I think it's really important to think about, get creative with the ways that you can support maintenance of that knowledge. And maybe it's you hire a high school kid to grow food in your yard, or maybe you can buy a massage for an overworked farmer so that they can keep going in their season. There are so many ways that you can do that, support what's going on. So I wanted to put that out there because I've gone through a lot of guilt around not being able to be a farmer and feeling like it's too hard. Yeah, so I think I'll stop there.
I wanted to say, first of all, that I really appreciate that, Kyle, every time you've spoken, you've talked about the actual fundamentals of farming, which are, you're looking at your soil, you're looking at your drainage, you're really thinking about everything that you need to do to your property or your land in order to make food grow. And when you are growing food every day, then you're constantly thinking about what the wind is doing, what the sun is doing, what the rain is doing, what the soil is doing, and so you're always right there thinking about it. I think that you can call yourself a farmer or a gardener, but I think that you can call yourself a farmer if you want to, if you just go out and grow a tomato in your backyard. But to speak to Maggie's point of just that knowledge of kindling the knowledge of growing your own food, that was so well put, and it's just so true. And that is something that every single person, I think you are responsible for it. I think that every single person in this room is responsible for going out and learning how to grow food and doing it. I do. So I'll leave on that.
What's we talked about? Anything else?
Share the floor. Okay, just go ahead.
Yeah, I can keep going. I think the part that I want to bring in that is important also in this question of like figure out what your gifts are, is figure out where you derive like meaning in your life, where you can keep in touch with awe and inspiration. Some of these questions that George has for us around like climate change and like how we do this as a community, they're like really big questions, and they can feel really overwhelming. And I think that like one of the like beautiful source like nutrients that comes out of growing vegetables is that feeling of keeping in touch with awe and wonder for the world, despite how challenging it can be. And so I think I'm interested in hearing from all of you, like on the days that are really hard, on the days when like intense news stories or whatever it is breaks out, like what keeps you motivated, what keeps you going, despite how challenging it can be at some points throughout the season.
For me, currently, it's the kids who I work with who keep coming back. There are some of them who have been around for longer than we have, and they keep showing up, and they have showed me over and over again that they really care and they really do want to learn how to grow food, and they take things home and they grow them in their little yard garden. One of my old interns showed up at the farmer's market last week. She was all excited. She had this picture of her little garden that she had started alongside her house. She even asked me, well, so my house faces west and my yard is over here, so if I want to put this in the ground, where should I do it? And I told her, and she showed me, and she was so proud and she was so excited. And it's that when I see my students experiencing that awe in the garden, even if it's just like they find a cool caterpillar and they think that that's the best thing that's happened to them all day, is that they found this cool caterpillar. And that the exploration, and when they're totally covered in dirt and they just want to like eat the carrots that are still dirty, and they're really into it. It's that when they're so in it that they forget about the things outside of the garden. That's what does it for me.
For me, it's farming is the best of both worlds. I love being alone. I've always been very introverted, but I also love people. So I have my alone time on the farm, and then I get to go to farmer's market, which is like the best thing in the world, because people are so happy and so encouraging and so supportive. We have so many stories of just every week I'm just drained and go to market, and people lift me back up by telling me what they cooked, or thank you for coming, it's windy, it's raining, it's muddy, the world's, what's going on, but we feel so lucky. We need to stop treating food like a commodity. It's nourishment, and there's nothing better than to be able to provide nourishment for people. We're very blessed.
It's hard to say, because I also really enjoy the alone time and also the connection to other people who are interested, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that the work is really rewarding. Not always, it's really actually quite hard a lot of the time, and but when you harvest a great harvest, that is very rewarding. And sharing the harvest is very rewarding. And people thanking you for providing that it's such a great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, ditto to what everyone has said, and I think I like still find such astonishment when I put a seed or a small plant into the ground and it gets bigger. It's like, how does that happen? And I think I love, like, every time I'm in a garden, there's some way that I'm humbled by what is happening that is way beyond my control, and I feel like I get to have this like privilege of participating for, you know, however long I'm in my garden space, and kind of like nudging energy in different directions, but I feel like a guest there, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really great when like flowers bloom. Pretty simple. But yeah, I mean, it gives me a lot of hope because there is a lot that's really intense about the world, and being able to like look at a flower and keep going, I think is really special.
You guys have any discussion things or questions from the audience? Or should we go to questions?
And you have stuff.
I think you should keep going if you feel comfortable doing so. One thing that struck me about the nature of our panel is we have 2 people who get institutional support with the Botanical Gardens, yeah, and with the school. I mean, the school, it's being renegotiated, but for years they've been incredibly generous with the Noyo Food Forest. And so, I mean, I hope the answer is we all support each other, but those are 2 very different models. And we understand that, so let's speak to that.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask, is sort of how do we all sort of fundamentally function? How is that possible for us to farm?
Well, and an obvious example is hospitals, excuse my voice, but hospitals can help gardening, and ours does a little bit, there's a little bit of that going on, but this is a really important conversation that kind of is a little bit about, we've heard this already today, the community health and, you know, a wellness center. There are a lot of institutions that could support gardens, and I think Matt, with his initiative, will get into how a community, there's a lot of empty lots at Fort Bragg, and some of the owners of those lots would be perfectly happy now. You know, there's problems with that model. Anyway, so exploring some of this, I think, there's a lot more to be done with institutional support, but we all really want to support Three Sisters and Nye Ranch too, which you're really on your own. And so this is like a little bit of a tension, but hopefully a creative, dynamic tension. Yeah.
So the question is like, how do we fundamentally exist?
I think so.
Operate?
Yeah, and operate.
And maybe, is that working?
And if it is, how do we grow
We're
it?
all here, right?
Yeah, totally.
So,
Okay.
So the Noyo Food Forest is a nonprofit. We have 3 employees, none of us are full-time. And we are currently operating with a grant from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And that pays for most things, but not all. We pay our interns. So the high school students that are working for us, they get a $400 stipend for completing the internship, and if they return, they get paid more. It's the job, basically. And the grant doesn't cover that. And we also rely on donations, and that helps to cover the intern stipend as well as other things that we can't buy anything for our interns from the grant, so any food or supplies that we buy for the interns come out of pocket. But at the same time, I realize that it is an incredible privilege that I get to be a farmer and I have an income that I know it's going to be the same thing given the number of hours that I work, that I am fully aware that I am so lucky. So that's how the Noyo Food Forest functions.
That's interesting. I hadn't really put this together in my head yet, but when I had your job, I accumulated quite a bit of savings, which was very unique, and I think that allowed me to work. I was sort of living off that for a little while I was working with Nye Ranch. It like helped make it so that I could work for them. So it kind of was still institutionally supported. Anyways. The coast is very tangled. Yeah, so Three Sisters Produce Company, we're learning a lot about running a business. We're breaking even, but we're not turning a profit. So my mom is still in her job. I think she's approaching, is it your 20th year as a garden teacher? 19th. 21st year she's been teaching gardening. So any young person in town knows how to use a shovel. They can do gardening for you. And I'm working at Glendevin, and then I'm also getting some support from my dad's side of the family to do school. So we are, a business, a private business, but still haven't turned that into a life-supportive business. Hopefully, someday. I did want to say though that, like, my mom and I we're not doing the business to make a profit. We get so much, what other people have said, like, we get so much nourishment from just talking to people about food and getting food into their homes, and that feels like a huge value that doesn't come with, like, that you can't put a dollar amount on that.
So the vegetable garden at the Botanical Gardens is sort of folded into the Botanical Gardens, which has many focuses having to do with collecting rare plants from around the world and to having display gardens and just being a public access place for people to go and have a lovely day. About 5 years ago, we had a fundraiser for the vegetable garden specifically, and specifically for it to expand and donate produce to the food bank here in town. And we had some huge donors, local businesses that donated to that project, and were able to expand quite a bit, and for a while hire one person, which was me, to be there almost full-time, but not quite. So it started off in the beginning, before I was there, as being mostly a volunteer effort, and it now is a really huge effort from volunteers to continue to make that happen and make food, make the food grow and take it to the food bank. I mean, it's really about many volunteers who are dedicated to the project and come in and make it happen.
Making a living as a farmer is hard, yeah, and we do have some help through grant organizations. And when my wife and I first started it, we're like, farming's awesome, it's seasonal. We get the winters off. And we took the winter off, and we're like, oh, it's spring and we have no money. This is not good. And so we've developed, we got a a grant from the USDA NRCS program to put up a couple of those caterpillar tunnels. You see tunnels out in the field, so we could grow more in the winter. And that was an awesome grant we received, so we can grow year round. And it still is just incredibly hard to make it through the winter. But we also have the Good Farm Fund, which is an awesome organization, which is just a local nonprofit that has events every year. If you ever see a Good Farm Fund fundraiser, I would love it if you make it. They're really fun. There's one every summer in Ukiah that has chefs from all over the county come out, and they all partner with farms and make a dish, and all the proceeds go to the Good Farm Fund grant, and the grant helps local farms get some much needed infrastructure. And they also have a winter feast in December at Barra Vineyards, and they did one here a few years back, and I think it's time we do another one. That'd be a great cool thing. But you know, they've been really helpful, and but yeah.
Yeah, so the Good Farm Fund is amazing. Like, yeah, oh yeah, they support the market match thing. But just to like, the differences in a grant that you get through the USDA compared to a grant that you get from a bunch of local community members who really care about like ease for farmers is like, it's different worlds. So yeah, just emphasizing the Good Farm Fund is really great. Keep your eyes open for those events. And
How is it different? How are they different?
well, I was trying to catch Cornelia's eye just to say hi, but Cornelia was the director when I worked at Noyo Food Forest, and I just remember sitting in there, and we would have to come up with like such specific lists for materials. You were only able to spend a certain amount on certain things, and you had to like submit all of these various stages of revisions like every couple of months. And if there was ever discrepancies, like it was this whole big thing. And so you ended up spending so much time on paperwork and dealing with all of these little tiny details and like not being able to farm. And from what I understand, the Good Farm Fund, basically you apply, they give you the money, and then you like tell them you did the thing, and then keep farming. It's like much more straightforward. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for saying that, because I am not allowed to bite the hand that feeds me, but
Great. I know.
others are, so.
I just wanted to say that this is really not, working with vegetables is not something that you do because you're trying to make a buck, you know? It's something that you do because something deep inside of you, in your heart, said, this is something you have to do, and you're going to make it work no matter what.
And huge thank you to the folks like Cornelia, and I think I saw Emily here, and other directors of these nonprofit organizations, the people who thought to put together the Good Farm Fund, who are thinking at this more administrative level to support the on-the-ground work. Like, yeah, it's amazing, and they're often behind the scenes. I don't even know who many of the people are, the Botanical Gardens folks, but yeah, they really make a lot of this possible.
Would anyone like to ask a question of these folks? Come up here, ask a question. Well, okay, yeah. Okay. I want to encourage everyone to keep their questions to less than 2 minutes, and do not take too long. Give it the shape that it can be addressed by our panelists here. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for coming, and this is great, listening to all of your stories and getting inspired. When we did the program in January, one of the things I took away from that was that cardboard is really helpful. Is that right? for keeping the ground covered, and do you guys not use cardboard? Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that it was something helpful, for breaking it down, and I also
I've used
understood,
cardboard before.
and I understood that the microbes and all the little guys living in the ground love it, it's like all those carbohydrates, they just, so I'm wondering if there are things that we could brainstorm that our community could do, little things that could help in the farming and growing, gardening process, because I know one of the comments that I heard directed at me after, when that person also heard that comment about cardboard, is the hospital gets a lot of cardboard sent to them, brown boxes, not the all fancy colored stuff that you're not supposed to use, right? And the question that this person posed to me was, gosh, can we not send that off to recycling? Can we keep that? Somehow, can we get it to the right places? Anyway, that's one example, I suppose, of something that we could maybe brainstorm that we could help.
I have a question too. But if you'd like to address that.
Oh, well, I was just gonna,
Cardboard is compostable, so anybody who has cardboard can compost it. If it has inks on it, you might look into what is in the inks if you don't want that product to be in your compost. But yeah, cardboard is a great compost material if that's something that you have.
So, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is how dependent producers are on materials that come from out of the area. And speaking of compost, it's really been very present on my mind lately that I'm completely dependent on my farming for soil products that are manufactured with ingredients that don't originate here in our community. And a lot of what we rely on for our food, a lot of our food doesn't come from our community. We're like really dependent on systems outside of us. So my question for you guys is, what do you think is the most important thing that we could focus on that would make us less dependent on external sources? Like if you were going to pick on one thing that we could do in our community to strengthen our farming capacity, and so that we were less dependent on outside resources, what do you think that would be?
You're gonna pass it on, so that's fine. Somebody raise your hand, and Sakina will bring
Yeah,
it.
I can speak from here, I think people are going to be.
Wait, let them
No,
answer.
there's a- yeah.
I think that this is something that I think is already done, but just really good recycling practices of all of the materials that we all use. Like if you buy starts and you have leftover plastic, give it to someone who's going to use it again. If you discover that you have extra shovels that you don't need, give them to someone who's going to use them. I think that just, if the entire community is participating in that sort of garden and farm specific recycling, that could take us pretty far.
Grow soil.
Why don't you explain? There were some blank.
Really be thoughtful about if you have a patch of soil, or if you support somebody who has a patch of soil, be thoughtful about how you are replenishing your own soil. So plants grow in soil, and you can build compost with plants and plant material, and And by putting compost into your soil, you can make your soil healthier. And by making your soil healthier, you can grow healthier plants. And then you can put those plant parts back into your soil. And you can grow a healthy garden by growing healthy soil in your backyard or by supporting someone who's doing it in the community.
I wanted to add that, Sakina, I think what you bring up is really important, and I think it's also really hard to answer that question with the way that our food system is modeled right now, even with small local producers like you and Kyle. Like you're small compared to most farms that exist and that are supporting the industrial food system. But it's still really hard to think about the idea of like making your own potting soil at your scale of operation. And so while we're in this interim time where you can buy potting soil, where you guys can get compost, where we all can like go to the nursery and buy a bag of potting soil, it's a really unique time in human history to be able to do that. And so these like workshops that Matt puts on about learning how to have the closed loop, I think those are really important for that keeping in touch with the knowledge, so that when whatever happens in the world where we can't access these resources anymore, we know how to make soil at a scale that's like feasible and manageable. And so that's where this like whole redesign comes in. Like we can't keep going the way that we're going and just replace what we use to do that. I don't think that's possible. So it's a huge question, and I think it's a really important one to be asking, and it's an important one to approach with hopefully like curiosity and interest, and not just fear and overwhelm. So yeah, look at some flowers before you try to tackle it.
Well, this is also sort of a great forum to talk about those kinds of things, and maybe we will do more of these in the future where we are actually addressing how we are getting materials, and if others have materials that are local that can help us, you know, and sort of the communication aspect, I guess, is what I'm saying, of just communicating with everybody locally about what is needed and where, and who has access where. That's a really important part of staying local.
And just to speak to the previous question, because it's kind of on that same thread, I think like the idea of, you know, figuring out who needs cardboard boxes and who has them, or who has extra pots. Sometimes I think those things are best worked out at like a neighbor, friend, community scale. It's like small garden size, whereas, you know, if somebody brought Kyle a bunch of cardboard, like it might not actually be helpful unless it's something he specifically asks for. And so I want to like caution everyone about like being sure that the stuff you're giving to people is actually wanted, and not just shirking responsibility in a project to someone else who has plenty of other projects to deal with already. Thanks.
I think with the, you know, I'm just going to stick with, Mendocino County used to, you know, less than 100 years ago, they grew all the grain. We didn't import any grain into the county, and now we're you know, 99% or more. We have the Mendocino Grain Project over the hill that's growing grain, and they're trying to grow it on the coast, and Lundberg's down in Elk growing quinoa and stuff, but we are importing, you know, over 90% of our food, and supporting all your farmers and your nonprofits is what's, I think, in where my heart lies, is that's what's going to help us the most. Weaning off fossil fuels and importing stuff from across the country or across the world. Yeah. There was a question back in the back there.
Yeah, I kind of want to bring it back to the whole issue of global climate change. And the reason I want to do that is not because we're going to solve that here, but because I think that we need to start thinking about this in terms of mitigation in our local area. How, for example, is our local environment changing the way the pollinators are arriving and when they're arriving, and what might be preying on them that might make it more difficult for them to be reestablished, things like that. So I'd like to hear you talk to this from a purely local perspective, especially those of you who've been doing this for at least 4 or 5 years, that have seen the patterns start to change. Because I know that many people here who do grow food have been noticing different things. And it seems to me that that's the kind of information that we as gardeners as well as farmers need to have access to, so that we know how to plan next year's garden better, how to address issues with pest management in a holistic way, but in a timely fashion, because we know that the timing is changing with everything. So that's what I'd like to hear you address, is what you are seeing in things of this nature right now over the past few years, just what kind of changes you're seeing.
Well, we are in a very unique climate where we can establish plants and hedgerows and perennials without even potentially irrigating them in the summer, because it's such a mild summer. There is shallow groundwater. We got a grant through the USDA and NRCS to do a pollinator hedgerow around our whole farm to bring in the pollinators, and it's, I think, all home gardeners, one thing they can do to keep those pollinators around and those beneficials is don't have a super manicured yard. You can manicure some stuff, but a lot of those bugs, those good bugs, they live in the woody dead debris. They live in those areas that you want to tidy up and you want to burn, or you want to throw in the compost. We've only been here 4 years, so I can't talk about the what's changed. I can just talk about what's changed on our small farm, and through building our soil and planting these hedgerows. We got plants across the street over at Jug Handle. There were, in 4-inch pots. They were this big. We planted them in the spring when there was enough water in the soil still, and now they're, chest high, head high, and we have Ceanothus and pink flowering currant and all these natives flowering, and all these grasses we have on the headlands, most of them, they're all non-natives, and to encourage more native habitat to kind of bring back the bees and other pollinators, I think is something that, the bee-friendly city and all that, we can continue to do, and I think it's very important.
I've been here on the coast growing vegetables for about 8 years now, and I really hesitate to make statements about how things are different without having data to support it. So I think, one thing that could be done in the community is sort of a hub for making those sorts of observations. Rainwater can be found out, but maybe making observations about when the apples are blooming, or what the apple set is, or certain pests in certain years. Like a sort of a database for those kinds of observations might be really helpful going into the future as we face potential changes. I can't say for sure what with a definite answer as to what has changed since I've started gardening here. I kind of feel like when I first started gardening, I was telling everybody that I did it at just the right time, because everything's starting to change and nobody can expect anything anymore, So I didn't come into it with any expectations. And I think that we can just change is what we can expect. Yeah.
I just wanted to like kind of contextualize us more from like a historical perspective, and that is that like this is not a region where agriculture necessarily evolved, and a lot of the annual crops that we love are like really delicate. And so when your garden, when the goal is to grow like lettuce and cucumbers, like those just aren't going to be very adaptive and resilient to changes at all. They're very temperamental. And so I think if you're interested in like cultivating your garden to be like adaptive to changes, I think perennial food sources are really great to try, because they just have more resources to pull on to respond to whatever's going on. And then in my own evolution just these past couple of years, I've been like floored at the wild foods that are available and the weeds that are available and edible. And actually Sojourna recommended a book to me that I love. I think it's The Wild Wisdom of Weeds that your friend wrote, and I'm slowly beginning to incorporate more of those into my diet, but plantain is going to grow no matter what pests are around, and it's a great like fresh green. So little things like that that you can look at, and it's hard to let go of some of those crops that we really love, but you can spend all your energy trying to like fend off the cucumber beetles from your chard or whatever, or like eat some nettles.
Yeah.
It's over there on the left, yeah, you referred
So we're talking about climate change, and we're talking about the changes that are being seen, and they're not showing up necessarily. I've lived on the coast and garden on the coast for 50 years, and I am seeing some changes, but they're very minor compared to what's happening in the rest of the country. I'm sure it's going to catch up to us, but just probably some of you know that the corn crop is down by, this is before the floods that just happened and still are happening. In the central part of the country, where 25 states have been impacted, and this is where most of the grain food and the animal products are grown. And there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of animals were killed in that flooding. And besides the corn crop being down before the flooding happened, now gasoline prices are going to go up to over $4 a gallon because there's no corn to put in the ethanol. And the corn that people had were saving to plant.
Judith, do you have a question? Oh, it's very interesting, but I just, let's try and focus.
I'm getting, do you want me not to stop? Or keep going?
No. It sounds like people want you to continue, but I would like it to not be.
Okay, well anyway, these people want me to go on, so. The soybean crop is down by 25%, 30%, excuse me. And all of the corn and the soybean are the main things that feed animals and feed the commercial animal industry in this country. So my question is, it's not so much for these poor people necessarily, but for the entire community, is how can we become more self-sufficient in our own food development. So, and these people are talking about that as it goes along, but I want to also express the urgency that we're seeing in the context of this video.
I think we're forgetting about the youth. There were very few people over the age of 18 when I was in Bainbridge Park on March 15th. We were doing, we had to break each other. I worked with disabled people. And that's when the climate march happened from the high school. And for those that have been around for a while. It was the most touching and endearing thing I've ever experienced. If that kind of energy could have been channeled, and right there, those people, okay, you are the future. We're going to give you your dream. And then something really could happen. And so my whole garden year is centered around March 15th. Years ago when I was in college, I was in Dayton. I started college, state college, and went to got into a community commune on that college. Everybody of like mind. But what I saw there at Bainbridge Park, the things that they said, their feelings were so powerful that we have to think about the children. We have to think about the language we're speaking, because our language is perverted. It's about expediency, and everybody's running around. And the foundation, which all you people are talking about, the foundation of our life is our Mother Earth. But our language gets all messed up. And we start, getting into all these side things. We have to deal with little kids, and we have to have a space for them for the rest of their life. That here you are, you have a place to live, and that's where we have to. That's what we have to build.
Yeah.
This is, I think, tied into that, and it speaks to everyone's experience here so far as I can tell. All of my friends who are farmers have had unique financial luck to be gifted land or to fall into some lucky situation. Others have relied on institutional support. Just being a young person and trying to rent on the coast at a farmer's wage is extremely difficult, let alone trying to buy land to start a farm or rent land to run a farm. And when I look at our community and all the wisdom in the room and all the experience, especially with 50 years of gardening experience and everything that all of you guys have done here, how important that is to the younger folks who are looking for experience in farming and looking to support a local food community. But we have a very difficult time envisioning how we can even make that a reality financially. Aside from the fact that farming is exhausting work that does not pay a living wage, a large question which is difficult is how do we make the opportunity available for people to actually do the work that they want to do to support the community.
This may be a rhetorical question, but I've been here 6 years, and since I've been here, I've seen real estate prices explode, people coming in from all over with, I'm an immigrant, so but the wealthy are buying up, or the real estate developers buying up land, raising the price, and moving people in. We don't have enough water, and what can we do to mitigate that? It seems almost an impossible task. We have a population that's exploding, nobody's addressing that. It's a taboo subject. So we need to, I think, look for you wisdom to see if you can give us some answers as to, I know you're all in that between the rock and a hard place with land and land prices and resource prices. So I'd like you to address that.
Yeah, water is a big issue on the coast. We get a bunch of it in the winter, or not a bunch. I'm from the Sierra foothills, and we got twice as much over there. But growing soil has the ability, by having healthy soils and doing less tillage on your land, you can capture more water and your plants become more resilient. The Rodale Institute, for instance, just on corn, for instance, they by increasing their organic matter and their crops were more resilient. to drought, as well as they produce 30% higher yields. And so if we can continue to foster the health of our soil, I think it will go to the health of us as well as the health of our planet and our aquifers and all that.
I wanted to just quickly throw out a couple of things that feel relevant. One is this question of like young people and what can we do as a community to be more resilient. I think, and this I'm sure is talked about in other spaces, but housing is a really big deal, and Matt mentioned this briefly for people on the coast. But if you have space that can be converted into something livable for a young person, that would be a huge gift to give this community, because young people who want to stay here have to leave because they can't find a place to live. They can't find shelter. So that feels like one thing. And then speaking to your point, you know, like this desire for questions, or you have questions, you have a desire for answers. I don't think we actually have answers yet, but I think we have to like let there be some space for creativity and discovery, because the way that technology has changed, even from when I was younger, like I didn't get my first cell phone until I was in high school. All the kids now are growing up with the internet, which gives them instant access to all kinds of information. And I don't think we've seen yet what impact that can have on like potential technological changes and that ability to put together a lot of information. And so I would say like, it's gonna look unlike anything that has ever happened before. We're entering this new era for humans, and I think, you know, there's a degree of just like being patient and teaching kids empathy in the midst of it all, so that whatever application of that technology, whatever that application is, there's a way that it's like rooted in the earth and rooted in connection. But I actually think that that's an important component of these big questions about water and population and things like that. But it's shapeless right now.
To go off of what you're saying about this big shapeless change that we're all staring in the face of, I think that it's really important to remember that everything you do individually is important, but maybe even more important is that we all apply maximal political pressure, and unrelentingly so, because this is huge change. This is really, 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 really big. And so that's why it's important to come to workshops about permaculture and learn how to compost, but also vote your heart out whenever you can.
You guys can vote. You pick.
I think you were first.
I have a kind of a soft voice, but I'll try and speak
Go
up.
to the mic.
Yeah.
Go to the mic and say what it's there for.
I just came to this community in October. I'm originally from New Mexico and spent the last 3 years in Oregon on a homesteading educational farm. In New Mexico, I started an organization, the Institute of Permaculture Education for Children. And I've been working with the team in Portland, putting on teacher trainings for permaculture education and all kinds of educational environments for about a decade now. And so my question, okay, so I have just a few thoughts running through my head that are topmost. And I'll get to them, I'm sorry, I'll be very quick, I promise, I will. I understand. And so my thought is, I am so excited to hear about the educational programs, that's the gardening teacher. Okay.
Wonderful, I can't wait to talk to you, but I'm really curious as to how integrated into the curriculum the gardening is, and how, if permaculture is a part of that education program, and I'd love to contribute anything that might be wanted in that direction. And then also, as far as like farm life, this educational homesteading farm had farm life education. So that was also another product that came from the farms, where students would come and spend anywhere from 3 to 5 days living on the farm and learning firsthand how to become a farmer, and the fact that you could become a farmer, and that this is an entirely different economy. So that idea about how you're not making money in the Wall Street version, that you're also creating a green economy that will eventually, I think we all probably have the instinct that that will be our new economy. So that's probably their future economy. So anyway, there's that concept, and then I want to throw in one other concept, and I won't really I promise. But I love hearing so much about all the food that is being produced, but I want to also throw out this thought about informing people about fiber and medicine and energy and all these other things that can come out of this kind of climate. And creating a network of, I can't begin to tell you how excited the students are in the permaculture programs and how they make change happen right now. I thought my students would, and you know, when they grew up, they would develop lives that would create change, but they would go home that very night from whatever they learned in their permaculture programs and say, guess what, Mom, this is what we're doing in our yard. This is what we're doing, you know, here at home right now. They would grow with it. And I would have irritated parents saying, oh God, now we're gardening. Now we have chickens and now we're recycling. But guess what? It happened right then and there. So that was really an exciting thing. And so bringing children onto the farm can do the very same thing.
Thank you.
Last summer, I brought the Noyo Food Forest kids both to the Botanical Gardens and to Nye Ranch. So,
Very quick.
Not a question, a statement. It's an interesting tidbit when you're talking about good soil that makes the plants more drought tolerant. So does an increase in the carbon dioxide level of the planet. And there's a study out of Davis here in California. The planet is greener since the carbon dioxide has gone up. But you could go look at the primary science. Those are the facts.
I actually am really glad that you made that comment, because I think one of the most important things that we need to take away and that we need to practice as a skill is communicating with respect, regardless of like the stance that someone may have. To grow up in a time, to come of age in a time when our political system is as like nasty as it is right now, is really disheartening. And I really hope that as a community we can host all of the experiences and all of the opinions and really practice communicating in a way that can lead to more potential rather than more headbutting. So I hope that's okay to throw that out.
I think that's a perfect place to end. And I want to thank the panel very much. And this is not the last conversation. We're going to keep this going. And it may not be the league that holds the next event. Matt's event about a garden-friendly city sounds pretty great. It's happening right here. There's a brochure you said, I think.
17th of April.
The 17th of April.
Right here.
Time?
6:30 p.m.
6:30 here. garden-friendly city. So, but we've got to keep this going. It's really important. Sorry about my voice. Thank you, panel. Any last comments you want to make? And then